You got the email on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, organizational update. Your heart sinks before you even open it. But it's not a layoff, it's a restructuring. Your position is being eliminated. But good news, there's a new role available. Same responsibilities mostly, different title. And when you scroll down to the compensation section, the number is $58,000. You're currently making $72,000. You're sitting at your desk, staring at this email, doing math in your head. That's a $14,000 pay cut, $1,167 less per month. And they're calling this a lateral transition opportunity. You're thinking this can't be legal. But it is. They're not firing you. They're offering you a different position. You can take it or leave. And if you leave, no severance because you chose to resign. And here's what nobody tells you. This is happening everywhere, right now. Companies figured out they don't need mass layoffs anymore. They just restructure your salary away while keeping you in the chair. My name is Peter. And if you've ever felt like your company is slowly squeezing your compensation down while expecting the same work or more, make sure you hit that subscribe button because the silent layoff is the biggest wage suppression mechanism of the 2020s, and most people don't even realize it's happening to them. So let's start with what a silent layoff actually looks like when you break down the mechanics. You're making $72,000 as a senior marketing coordinator. You've been there for years. You're good at your job. Performance reviews are solid, no issues. Then the restructure happens. Your position is eliminated. They create a new role, marketing specialist. Same desk, same projects, same manager, but it's a different job code in the system. The offer? $58,000. That's a 19% pay cut. And here's how they justify it. The role has a different scope. Except the scope is identical. You're doing the same work you did yesterday, but on paper, it's a new position with a new salary band. You take it because you need the job. You've got rent at $1,650, car payment at $425, student loans at $340. You can't afford to job hunt for 3 months with no income, so you take the $58,000. And here's what happens to your finances. Before, $72,000 salary, after taxes, about $4,500 monthly take-home. After, $58,000 salary, after taxes, about $3,650 monthly. You just lost $850 monthly, $10,200 annually, and your expenses didn't decrease. Your rent is still $1,650. Your car payment is still $425. Your student loans are still $340. Before the restructure, you had about $900 discretionary after fixed expenses. Now, you've got $50 for the entire month, for gas, food beyond groceries, anything unexpected, any kind of life whatsoever. You went from tight but manageable to financially strangled, overnight, with no actual change in your job duties. And this is where it gets particularly brutal. You can't quit and claim unemployment because they offered you a position. You turned it down. That's a voluntary resignation. No unemployment benefits. You can't sue for wrongful termination because they didn't terminate you, they restructured. Completely legal. You can't even really job hunt effectively because now you're desperate, and desperation shows in interviews, and you need to accept something quickly, which means you'll probably take the first offer, even if it's also $58,000 or lower. You're trapped, and that's not an accident. That's the design.
Most people think the biggest job risk is getting fired, a sudden layoff, a termination, walking into work one day and being escorted out. That's not how it works anymore. That's the trap. Here's what actually happens in 2026. Companies don't fire people. They restructure them. They eliminate positions and recreate similar ones at lower salary bands. They hire consultants for projects that used to be full-time roles. They convert full-time positions to contract positions with no benefits. And the result is the same as a mass layoff. Lower labor costs without the headlines, without the severance obligations, without the unemployment insurance hit. It's a layoff in everything but name, and it's spreading across every industry. Tech companies call it right-sizing. Banks call it organizational efficiency. Retailers call it role optimization. But the mechanism is identical. Reduce compensation while maintaining or increasing workload. Here's a real example from 2025. A mid-sized software company, 400 employees. They announce a restructure. Eliminate 80 positions, create 60 new positions. Same departments, same functions, lower salaries. 20 people actually lose their jobs. 60 people get offered transitions to the new roles at 15 to 25% pay cuts. Average pay cut, $16,000 annually in reduced salaries, plus another $240,000 annually in reduced benefits costs, because some people chose to leave rather than take the cuts. And here's the genius of it. The 20 people who actually got laid off get severance. The 60 people who took pay cuts, they're still employed. No severance, no unemployment, just smaller paychecks. From the company's perspective, this is perfect. Lower costs, retained institutional knowledge, no bad press about mass layoffs. The stock doesn't drop because headcount didn't decrease much. From your perspective, you're making $16,000 less per year doing the same job, and you can't do anything about it. This is called compensation compression, and it's become the primary tool for corporate cost-cutting in the 2020s. There's a specific psychological mechanism that makes this particularly effective. It's called loss aversion combined with employment precarity. Your brain is wired to avoid losses more than it seeks gains. Losing your job, even a job that underpays you, feels like a bigger loss than the potential gain of finding a better job feels like a gain. So when you're offered a 19% pay cut versus unemployment, your brain calculates, I can survive on $58,000. I can't survive on zero. And you take the cut. And companies know this. They know that in an economy where most people are living paycheck to paycheck, the threat of zero income is enough to make people accept significant pay reductions. They also know that you're probably not going to immediately find another job at $72,000, because if you could, you probably would have already left. So your realistic alternative to taking the $58,000 position isn't finding a $72,000 position somewhere else. It's probably finding a $55,000 to $62,000 after 3 months of searching. So you take the $58,000. And you're thinking, this is temporary. I'll take this, stabilize, then quietly look for something better. Except you're now making $58,000. And when you interview elsewhere and they ask your current salary, you're anchored to $58,000. The next offer is $62,000. That's only a 7% increase over your new salary, but it's still 14% below what you were making a year ago. You just got permanently re-anchored to a lower salary band. And companies know this. So let's run the math on what this compensation compression actually costs you over the course of your career. You're 34 years old. You were making $72,000. You take the restructured position at $58,000. That's a $14,000 annual loss. Over the next 5 years, assuming you get 3% annual raises from the $58,000 base, you earn roughly $308,000. If you had stayed at $72,000 with the same 3% raises, you would have earned roughly $382,000. That's $74,000 in lost earnings over 5 years. And that's assuming you eventually get back to a $72,000 equivalent through job hopping. Most people don't fully recover. Over 10 years, the gap compounds. You're looking at $160,000 to $180,000 in lost lifetime earnings from one restructure. And here's what that $160,000 represents. That's a house down payment. That's fully funding a retirement account. That's financial security you're never getting back. You're lying in bed. It's 2 a.m. on a Thursday. You took the $58,000 position 6 months ago. You're doing the same work you did before, same projects, same deadlines, same stress, but your bank account is different. You've got $180 in checking. Payday is Friday, which will bring you to $36.50. Then rent hits for $16.50, car payment $425, student loans $340,
groceries $380, utilities $145, gas $160, phone $85. You're doing mental math. That's $3,185 in fixed expenses, leaves $465 for the rest of the month. And you need to buy a bridesmaid's dress for your friend's wedding, $180, down to $285. And that tightness in your chest, it's not about the dress, it's about the trap. 6 months ago, you had $900 discretionary. You could say yes to things, you could breathe. Now you're doing mental math about a $180 dress like it's a major purchase. The company saved $14,000 on your salary. You lost $850 monthly in margin, and nothing about your actual job changed except the pay. So here's how people who see this happening protect themselves before it's too late. They don't anchor their financial lives to their current salary. They live on 75% of their income and save or invest the rest. So when the restructure happens and they're offered a 20% pay cut, they can decline it because their lifestyle isn't dependent on 100% of their income. When they see restructures happening in their industry, they don't wait to be targeted. They immediately update their resume, activate their network, and start looking, not desperately, strategically, while they still have leverage. They document everything, every project, every success, every responsibility. So when they're interviewing elsewhere, they can demonstrate value that justifies their previous salary, not their restructured salary. They negotiate from their previous compensation, not their current compensation. When asked about salary expectations, they say, "My compensation was $72,000 before a company restructure. I'm looking for roles in the $75,000 to $80,000 range." They don't hide the restructure. They frame it as a company decision, not a reflection of their value. They build skills that are portable and in demand, so they're not trapped at one company. They can leave, and companies know they can leave, which makes them less likely to be targeted for compression in the first place. While most people wait until they're handed the pay cut offer and then panic, they see the restructure coming and position themselves to either avoid it or walk away from it without financial devastation.
This doesn't make you immune to corporate cost cutting. It doesn't solve the systemic problem. But here's what it does. You're not trapped when the email comes. You're prepared. You've got 6 months of expenses saved. You can decline the $58,000 offer and take your time finding something at $72,000 or better. You're not anchored to the lower salary. You negotiate from your actual value in the market, not from your compressed salary. You're not financially devastated. Your lifestyle isn't calibrated to 100% of your income, so a temporary income reduction doesn't destroy your finances while you transition. You sleep differently, not because you're protected from restructures, because you're positioned to handle them without panic. Now, let me be clear about something. This isn't about being paranoid or assuming every company is out to cut your pay. Most companies aren't actively trying to compress compensation, but the ones that are have figured out that this method works. It's legal, it's quiet, it achieves the same cost savings as layoffs without the political or public relations cost. And if you're not prepared for it, you end up taking a 19% pay cut and spending the next 5 years trying to recover financially from a decision a company made in a boardroom. So here's the thing about the silent layoff. It's not actually a layoff in the legal sense. It's a restructure, a reorganization, a transition opportunity. All the corporate language that makes it sound voluntary and reasonable. But the result is the same. Your compensation gets cut. Your financial stability gets damaged. Your lifetime earnings take a permanent hit. And you had almost no say in any of it. Most people don't see it coming because it doesn't look like the layoffs they're used to. There's no security escort, no goodbye email, no severance check, just a new role with a lower salary and the implicit threat that you can take it or leave. But once you understand the mechanism, you can prepare for it. Not by trying to prevent it. You can't control corporate restructuring decisions, but by positioning yourself so that when it happens, you have options. And having options is the difference between taking a $58,000 pay cut because you're desperate and declining it because you're prepared.
The question isn't whether your company will restructure. The question is whether you'll be ready when they do.